Hello guys and gals, Ripsy Dunn here. Since I've finally been released from the shackles of academia for a spell, I can at last talk about what everyone's waiting on. That's right, I'm talking about the fourth Singularity, London. A lot's going down, but not London Bridge. We're going to be talking about three main things: the summon banner and its new servants, the interludes, and also the three mystic codes that we're getting. So, without further ado, let's jump right on in. With the addition of London, we'll be getting 5 new servants. Let's start with the 3-star servants. First up is a giant lug of metal that is somehow considered a caster servant. Go figure. Charles Babbage is a different type of caster servant in more ways than one. It has a max scale attack of 8,115, which is the second lowest attack for a caster up to the making of this video. His max HP of 14,761 makes him pretty tanky, which is a plus. He has a respectable NP gain of 0.91 on attack and a typical 3% NP gain on defense. What makes Charles Babbage different is his deck. His deck is Quick Arts, Buster. Yes, he is the first caster that we've received that does not have 3 arts cards. No, our friend Babbage is our battle mage, and his skills try to help him do his job. Kinda. So, first off, there is Single-Mindedness C. This skill will boost his MP generation for 3 turns, from 20% to 30%, and his critical star absorption for 1 turn, from 500% all the way up to 1000%. His second skill, Mechanized Armor EX, boosts his own attack from 15% all the way up to 25%, and grants himself immunity for a turn, invincibility for a turn. And let's see, later on after a strengthening quest, it will further increase the attack boost from 20% all the way up to 40%. His third skill, Overlord D, boosts MP damage for 1 turn from 15% to 25%. But on the downside, it inflicts self-burn for 300 damage for 5 turns. Not a really good after effect to have, but he's a work in progress. His only passive skill is Item Construction False A, which increases debuff success rate by 10%, and Babbage's Noble Phantasm is the only way he can really make use of this skill. His Noble Phantasm Dimension of Steam is a Buster type AoE of Noble Phantasm, which means he can bust a Brave Chain for an additional attack boost, with a maximum damage of 600% at MP5. The secondary effect drops enemy defense from 10% to 20%, so our Mecha Battle Mage joins the ranks of caster servants, and it will be pretty interesting to see how he performs. Next up is a very nice caster that might make me abuse my friend points to try to summon him. Paracelsus von Hohenheim is one of those low star casters that you really want in your corner if you have an arch team. He has a max attack of 9,082 and a max HP of 12,889, which are both kinda typical for the caster class. He has a low MP gain on attack of 0.55% and the typical gain on defense for about 3%. But to be honest, his gain on attack really isn't that important, and I'll explain that later. He has the normal caster deck of Quick Arts, Buster. Now, his first skill is why his MP gain doesn't really matter all that much. High Speed Incantation A charges his own MP gauge from 55% at level 1 to 80% at level 10, so it won't be very difficult for him to get his Noble Phantasm off. His second skill, Elemental Skill A+, increases the whole party's arts performance for 3 whole turns, though it's only 10% at the beginning. If you somehow manage to max him up at level 10, it goes all the way up to 20%. Paracelsus is a team player, and his third skill, in my opinion, is his best skill for team support. Philosopher's Stone A is the first skill that allows a servant to grant guts to anyone on their team. That's definitely a powerful skill that would make it pretty handy to have at one's disposal. Now, he has two passive skills. Territory Creation A, which increases the damage of arts cards by 10%, and Item Construction EX, which increases debuff success rate for 12%. And his Noble Phantasm, Sword of Paracelsus, can make use of both of these passives. Here we are. Sword of Paracelsus is an area and effect archetype Noble Phantasm that deals 300% damage at MP1 to 500% damage at MP5, adding 10% to 30% attack decrease based on his charge. In short, Hohenheim may be a 3-star servant, but he is a very good 3-star servant. Speaking of good 3-stars, the next one is the first of its kind, and best of all, free once you complete London. Henry Jekyll and Hyde is by far the servant I'm looking forward to the most with the coming of London. This is essentially because, if you know the lore of Dr. Jekyll, he is pretty much two servants all in one, and his stats show it. He, or they, have a max attack of 8,553 and a max HP of 13,118. His star absorption of 99 as an assassin servant, and an absorption of 9 as berserker. Yes, you heard me right. He has 99 as one class and 9 as another class. He has a star generation rate of 25.6 at his initial state, and dropping to 5% in his insane state. His MP gain on attack only changes by about 0.03, so nothing much to speak on here. And the same goes for his gain on defense. His deck is pretty much a merge clash between Assassin and Berserker. His deck is Quick Arts Buster, substituting one of the Buster cards for a Quick card. His starting skill, Monster Strength B, increases Henry attack for 3 whole turns, but depending on which persona is in control determines the level of the attack boost. He gains 5% all the way up to 15% at level 10 if he's in his base form. However, if Mr. Hyde is in control, he gains an additional 20% to whichever level he is currently in. Skill number 2, Voice of Panic A, increases debuff rate and then attempts a 10% stun to the enemy. The debuff rate goes from 5% to 15%, but if Hyde is in control, it will gain an additional 85 to 135% chance. So if you're going to use the skill, Hyde will probably be the only one to make real use of it. His final and most terrifying skill is Self-Modification D. This skill is scary because it increases his critical damage for 3 turns. And if Lancelot has taught us anything, a berserker with crit damage can do some major pain. This skill will take his crit damage from 5 to 15% like his other skills at his base form, but when he's Mr. Hyde, increases critical damage by an additional 20%. Their passive skills, Presence Concealment A, when he's in assassin form, increases critical star generation rate by 10%. However, when he changes to Mr. Hyde and becomes a berserker, he gains Mad Enhancement A, which will increase his Buster card's damage performance by 10%. His Noble Phantasm, Dangerous Game, is what makes all of this happen. Dangerous Game is a Buster type Noble Phantasm that changes Assassin, Dr. Jekyll, to Berserker, Mr. Hyde. This increases his maximum HP from 2,000 to 5,000 based on his MP level. It fully recovers his HP and indefinitely increases his Buster performance from 20% to 60% if you get him to maximum charge at least. So with this, his max HP is more like 26,000, somewhere around that ballpark. Pretty high. It is important to note though that this Noble Phantasm can only be used when he is in Dr. Jekyll form, meaning that it's a one-shot Noble Phantasm, and you pretty much want to make sure the charge is as high as you can get it before you use it. Speaking of Berserkers, the 4-star server for this banner is Frankenstein. She has a max attack of 11,431 and max HP of 12,958. Pretty much the average for Berserkers, as well as her star generation, store absorption, and MP gain on defense. Her MP gain on attack is somewhat low compared to that of other Berserkers. She has the standard Berserker deck of a quick arts buster. Now, skill number one, Galvanism B increases own MP generation rate for 3 turns, from 25% to 45% once you max it out. This will help with her lackluster attack charge gain. Skill number 2, Lament of the Falsely Living Sea has a 60% chance to stun one enemy for 1 turn and reduces enemy defense as well. The decrease goes from 10% to 20%, but once you complete her interlude, it further increases the defense drop by another 10%. Bringing in the rear, Skill 3 is Overload C. It increases her MP damage for 1 turn, from 20% to 30%, but it will also inflict self-burn for her for 300 for about 5 turns. Her passive skill is Mad Enhancement D. It increases her Buster card performance by 4%. Her Noble Phantasm is Blasted Tree, which is a quick type area of effect Noble Phantasm that deals 700% damage to about 1100% damage before you get her interlude. It also reduces enemy critical chance from 10% to 30%, though unfortunately using her Noble Phantasm will stun her for 2 whole turns. So if you're going to use her, be ready to protect her, or carry someone who can remove debuffs like Marie Antoinette or Jeanne d'Arc after she gets her interlude. Bringing in the rear is the 5-star of this banner, son or daughter, however you like to take it, of King Arthur, Saber Servant Mordred. She has a max attack of 12,833 and a max HP of 16,083, strikingly similar to her father. This one will improve Buster card performance for 1 turn from 30% up to 50% at level 10. Instinct B is the next skill. Pretty self-explanatory. Upon use, we'll give her 4 critical stars, up to 14 critical stars if for some reason you manage to max this skill out. Well, nothing else to see here. Moving on to her last skill. Being of noble blood, her last skill is called Secret of Pedigree EX. Not very secret at this point, but I digress. Her most unique skill will increase her defense from 30% to a whopping 50%, and remove any debuffs, and charge her Noble Phantasm gauge from 10% to 30%. After looking at all her skills, her skill set bears a striking similarity to Saber Lily. Her passes are pretty bad in my honest opinion. Magic Resistance B, which adds resistance to debuffs, but her 3rd skill removes debuffs anyway, so kind of a moot point. And Riding B increases quick card performance by 8%, but she only has 1 quick card, so again, not very useful. Her Noble Phantasm, Clarent Blood Arthur, is also an area of effect Buster type Noble Phantasm. There's been quite a lot of these anti-army servants on this banner. Jeez. Anywho, Clarent Blood Arthur damage will go from 300% to 500% if you manage to get her to MP5. But let's be honest, for most people, it's only going to be at 300%. At least until her interlude, which adds another 100% to the damage. The secondary effect of her Noble Phantasm deals extra damage to any authorial or author servant and charges her MP damage. Seems like someone might have some daddy issues. Now for the interludes. With London, it was advertised that 5 servants will be getting interludes in London. All the servants on this list are not guaranteed to have interludes upon the release of London, but the conditions to unlock them is to complete London, so I'll just go over them anyway. Going down the list, Atlanta will get an additional 200% damage increase, as well as a 5 critical star increase. Diramood adds another 400% damage to his Noble Phantasm, whereas Fergus will only gain an additional 100%. Frankenstein will receive 2 interludes in London. The first will be a damage increase by 200% and drop the enemy critical chance by 10%. Then her second interlude will power up her skill, Limits of the Falsely Living, increasing the defense drop by another 10%. Hans Christian Andersen will receive 2 rewards for completing his interlude. He will gain 1 Saint Quartz, and his Noble Phantasm will gain an additional party buff by gaining a chance to increase star generation for the entire party. I guess I did skip Gilgamesh. I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of on purpose. I'll admit, I'm a Gilgamesh hater, and I know some people feel the same way.
Yes! Suck it, Gilgamesh!
But for fairness, Golden Boy's interlude will give him another 100% damage increase, and increase his Noble Phantasm damage by 30%. Henry Jekyll and Hyde will increase max HP by 1000, and further boost Buster performance by 20%. The Lolly serial killer, Jack the Ripper, will gain 200% damage for her Maria the Ripper. Jeanne d'Arc's secondary effect for her Noble Phantasm will change to removing debuffs for the entire party, a much desired and needed change for Jeanne. Grown-up Medea gets an additional 150% boost to damage, whereas Demon Clown Mephistopheles will gain 100% damage buff to his Noble Phantasm, and the chance to inflict curse changes to simply inflict curse, and moves the curse damage in multiples of 500 based up on damage. On charge, my bad. Illusionary Revenger Mordred will tack on 100% damage and gain an additional 10% Noble Phantasm charge. Nursery Rhyme will, like Medea, gain 150% damage increase. Paracelsus, our team MVP, will also gain 100% damage increase. Sakata Kentoki will give you a Saint Quartz until you get out of his face. I'm kidding, but he will only give you 1 Saint Quartz. Tamamo Cat will give you 200% damage increase and finds a better nap spot, thus increasing recovery gain by another 1000. Waifu, Tammy O, will make Fox's wedding even more awesome by adding the extra effect of healing the recipient by 1000 and increasing by 150 based on its level. If my mother did not stop my Dracula-inspired father, me and the last servant wouldn't have been sharing names. That's right, Vladdy Boy will have 2 interludes. First one will increase his lethality level by giving him a whopping 300% boost to Cosmically Bay and granting him 5 additional crit stars. Second interlude changes Shapeshift C into Legend of Dracula A, adding another 4% to his defense and granting an attack gain that mimics his defense. I know I'm really excited for these servant updates. Truthfully, one of them can't get here fast enough.
Hurry! Hold yourself together! The fun has just begun!
On to the Mystic Codes. All 3 of the following Mystic Codes will all likely be using for quite some time, since they take a staggering 70 million EXP in order to max them out. So it's going to take you about 10 times the time it took to max out the starting Mystic Code we received from Jump. The first Mystic Code, and my personal favorite, will be the Mage's Association uniform. It grants us an all heal of up to 2800. Spiritron Transfer will give a free 20 MP gauge boost to a servant, and the most interesting is the Command Shuffle. There's been way too many times that right after using Jean's Noble Phantasm, my next hand is all Jean cards, so the bad guys pretty much get a free turn to pound on my stunned servants. The reshuffle ability can mitigate that possibility, or if you want to Brave Chain with your Noble Phantasm and are just looking for 2 more cards, this will give you another chance for that. The Chaldea Combat Uniform, for what I understand is the one people are most looking forward to. It's geared more towards, let's say, if you play Overwatch, dive comp. Basically, get in there, beat them up, and hope the gracious they don't have a good survivability. Reinforce All gives an attack boost for the entire party up to 30%. If the former blitz play didn't finish off the enemy, we can hit him with a Gondor shot and stun him for at least one turn. If all else fails, we can use a substitution with Order Change, swapping out our old used servant for one that's fresh and raring to go, preferably one with a Noble Phantasm ready to pop off. Lastly, the Mystic Code with the most class, the Atlas Institute uniform. This Mystic Code helps your servant by providing backup so the servants can concentrate on their job. Dust of Osiris gives invulnerability to a target's servant, kinda like the evade skill, but invulnerability just sounds much more reliable. Rain of Isis will lift debuffs your servant may receive on the front lines, particularly useful when one of your servants is waiting to pop their ult, but is simply charmed or too stunned by their adversary. Eye of Medjed will drop cooldowns for a servant's skills by up to 2, so if you can combine this mystic skill with Tamiyo's Eightfold Blessings of Amaterasu, you can essentially time jump one servant 3 turns forward. One thing I don't want to leave out is that with the addition of London, we will finally gain access to quests that will have drop for Forbidden Pages, Eternal Gears, and Homunculus Babies. And if you haven't heard from the generosity of the Amniplex crew, we will all be receiving a total of 30 Saint Ports if all goes as planned. Are you going to use them to try to summon Mordred, or will you save them all for a rainy day? One thing is for sure, maintenance has just started and we're counting down the hours and minutes for London's release. This is Ripsy Thun, guys and gals, and I'll see you in London. Bye!